Welcome everybody to San Francisco Zine Fest Cyberfest, our event running from September 6th through September 26th. And for more details, you can check out sfzinefest.org. This presentation is going to be a Riso printing demo with Chute Studio. And just to give you an idea of what's happening today, first off, I'm going to give a little intro to San Francisco Zine Fest and Cyberfest, go over our house rules and expectations, introduce you to Chute Studio and to our wonderful guest artists who are demoing today. Then we're going to do an actual Riso demo where they're going to talk about what is Riso printing and how does it work. There will be time for questions. If anybody has any questions, you can ask them in the YouTube live chat or on Facebook Live. And then we will close out a little bit, let you know what's up next for Zine Fest. So first off, San Francisco Zine Fest was founded in 2001 as a gathering place for writers and artists from around the world, but especially the Bay Area. Typically held as a one-day event at the County Fair building in Golden Gate Park. Our 2019 festival had about 240 exhibitors and over 5,000 attendees. Due to COVID-19, our 2020 festival is going 100% virtual. So Cyberfest is this year's Zine Fest 2020. It is 3 weeks of online programming that we have been running from September 6th through September 26th. We have exhibitor show and tells, readings, demos like this one, interviews, games, all sorts of events. And because it's a 3-week-long event, we have 3 guests of honor. Our first week guest of honor was Alex L. Combs. This week, our guest of honor has been Death P. Sun. And starting tomorrow, week 3, our guest of honor is Tana Tucker. And I want to read a little bit about our Safer Spaces policy. We are committed to providing a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, or religion. We will not tolerate harassment at SFZF events in any form. Individuals violating the Safer Spaces policy may be sanctioned or expelled from the space or the event at the discretion of any SF Zine Fest organizer. And so we ask that everyone respect people's opinions, beliefs, differing states of being, and differing points of view. Always get explicit verbal consent before taking someone's photo or crossing other personal boundaries. Be responsible for your actions and aware that they may have an effect on others regardless of your original intent. And remember that a safe and respectful community is everyone's responsibility. Guidelines for folks who are in the actual Zoom, please keep your video off unless you're presenting. This will prevent lagging and also make it easier for us to see our ASL interpreters. Please keep your video on mute unless you're presenting. If you have a question, ask in the chat, and there will be folks in here to assist you. ASL interpretation today is provided by Artie, Anchondo, and Gregorio Nieto of ProBonoASL. If you need ASL interpretation, you can pin the interpreter's window. Be mindful for folks who are blind or visually impaired by being specific and descriptive when sharing your work. And remember that this Zoom session is being recorded and broadcast to Facebook and YouTube. So video that shows up in the meeting and audio that shows up in the meeting will show up on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. And above all, we ask that people be respectful. So today we have Chute Studio with us. Chute Studio is a collaborative Riso studio of Amy Burek and Zach Clark, located in Berkeley, California. Amy publishes as Awkward Ladies Club and Zach publishes as National Monument Press. They both participate in fairs across North America. Risograph is an automated duplication process, kind of like a photocopier that can screen print. Chute uses an MZ 1090, RZ 310, and several RZ 2020s. So thank you for joining us, Amy and Zach. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Amy Burek, and I publish under the name Awkward Ladies Club.
I'm Zach Clark, and essentially I which exists inside Kala. I don't know Kala's full name. Kala, it's in Berkeley. You've driven by it. It's by Berkeley.
Kala Art Institute.
Yeah, Kala Art Institute.
So I bought my first Risagraph printer in 2016. Originally only printed in black and white, and slowly over the years collected a few other colored drums. But I've been using the same machine for 5 or 6 years now, for a bit.
Yeah, and then I bought the machine we're going to do the demo on today, about 2017. It's kind of the same generation as Amy's. And then that's been my workhorse for a while. And then when we decided to start collaborating together, we bought this MZ1090 that is off to my left. It's a 2-drum machine. It's a little newer, and in theory, a better machine. In theory. We have multiple machines because they all are different sizes. The 220 prints legal size, the 310 prints letter size, and the MZ prints on tablet size. And so they kind of. I'm sorry?
Sorry, Amy and Zach, we're having some trouble hearing you on the audio. Would it be possible for you to move closer to your computer?
Sorry, we were not projecting enough. Yeah, so with that, we have 22 drums, which have these 21 colors. Yeah, we both publish our own work. We also publish work for other people, and then do some collaborative publishing as well.
Yeah. And we just moved into this shared space together, I think exactly 1 month ago.
Whoa, it's been that long?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a little bit about Risagraph Printing. The machines look and function similar to a photocopier. They were originally designed to be used in offices as an alternative to a Xerox machine. But the way that the Riso prints is very different than in a laser printer or inkjet printer. The printing is actually most similar to silkscreen printing. So the Riso scans your image and creates a stencil. And the stencil is wrapped around an ink drum. And then for each print, the machine moves 1 sheet of paper through the machine. And as the ink drum rotates, ink is pushed through the stencil. So the machine prints 1 color at a time, 1 page at a time.
Yeah, it's this kind of a piece of paper that is on top of it. It's kind of shining to where you all are. This is essentially our silk screen. It's a piece of paper that has a bunch of tiny holes punched into it that makes our stencil. And then it's on top of a piece of mesh that's exactly like screen printing mesh. And there's a wire body mesh that is on top of all of it. From there, it's pulling ink out of this tube. All Riso inks are soy and rice-based oil, so they are, in theory, a little more environmentally friendly than some other printing processes.
Mm-hmm. And so for each color that you want to print, you'll need a separate drum with that color ink inside. So with these machines, when we want to print a multicolor image, we choose the order in which we want the inks to be applied to the page. And for each color, for each color printed, the paper goes through the machine another time. So 2-color print will have gone through the machine twice. A 3-color print goes through the machine 3 times. And we're going to do a little bit of a demonstration on how scanning an image in works, and then what the prints come out at the other end.
So Amy made this quick 2-color mock-up of what's going to happen. We're going to print a layer in melon and then a layer in indigo. Riso inks are super transparent unless they have some white in them. So one of the cool things about Riso is that you can make more colors by combining colors. I guess real quick before the demo, one of the things that we have printed was Death's poster. And so we can see this was done in Midnight and Sunflower, but we've got some greens and we've got some like different, quite a tonal spectrum that's happening just by those two colors that were printed together. Yeah.
So we can do a quick demonstration and then we can show you some examples of our work. And then after that, we can answer some questions because we actually got questions, which I'm excited about.
Nice.
So I'm going to start with this melon layer. This machine we're using, we can only use the scanner bed. It doesn't have the computer hookup. The newer machine does. It's got their pros and cons of which way you prefer working. But so for this, I'm just going to place this on the scanner bed and then start the mask.
So functionally, it's very similar to a Xerox machine. There's a glass scanning bed on the top. And you put your original face down. The scanner scans it, and then it sends that information to the stencil cutter. Right, so there's our first print out of the machine.
It looks kind of crummy because much like with screen printing, it needs a few runs to get enough ink in there to get us a good solid print for us to get kind of representative of what the image is. So now I'm going to run 10 or 15 prints and see what we get.
Is this called flooding, like in screen printing?
Yeah, it's the same thing, yeah. So your first print is always going to be the lightest. Okay, how are we looking now?
So that was 15 prints. You saw how fast that happened, which is one of the perks to Riso. You'll see though also that we've got this banding that's happening. That's because a couple weeks ago, this drum was a sunflower drum, and we wanted to change it to a melon drum. With these, to switch out the color in the drum, you have to take it apart and fully clean it out. And even still, you're gonna have some residual ink that was there before. With this, since sunflower and melon were close enough, we just put the tube right in. And so we're gonna get a few hundred prints that kind of have some striping until it's fully solid. This has been going for quite a few jobs now, so this is pretty close, but that's why that stripe is happening.
Yeah, so since the machines were originally designed to be used in an office environment, we're kind of pushing it past what they were originally designed to do. So each drum, the drums aren't designed for the ink colors to be changed, but with enough time and patience, you can do it yourself.
And what was the original purpose of the machines?
Just for photocopying. So the appeal of the Riso versus a Xerox machine is that it can print a lot faster and the prints are less expensive per page. Laser toner is pretty expensive. You might be spending $100 on one toner cartridge for an office printer. A tube of black ink is only $35 for the Riso, and you can print, I think it's about 2,000 copies from a single tube of ink. So even though you can only print one page at a time, you can't, with the Riso, you can't put in a stack of 10 different images and have it come out already collated. But you can print each individual page a lot faster. I think the top speed for these machines are like 100 pages a minute or something. It's impressive.
Yeah, also the example that I use is that, like, you know, these have really been popularized by churches and schools and the military. And so it's the type of thing of, say, you know, you're a middle school somewhere that you have a red logo, you could have just a black drum and a red drum, and you could print your, you know, letters, your PTA letters with all of your text in black that have your red logo on the letterhead, and you're just paying for 2 colors of ink versus having to, as any of us who have digital printers know, somehow even when you're printing black and white, you use up all of your cyan tube somehow. And so that way it's more cost effective on that route also.
So most of these machines, I think at least 2 out of 3 of ours were originally in offices, and they've been given a second life by artists. So my first machine, the 220, was from, it was in an elementary school in San Jose. And I believe the 310 was originally in a church, is that right?
No, this was like a guy who ran a PTA at his kid's school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's where that example came from.
Yeah.
So, and it's getting popular enough now that design schools and artists are starting to buy brand new machines with the intention to print art with them. But that's a pretty recent development. I would say up until the last 2 or 3 years, most of the artists who are printing with a Risograph were printing on used machines that had been repurposed.
So I put the next color in the drum, and we're probably 6 feet away. And so with this, I put the new drum in, and now I have the indigo. Each of these drums, they're maybe 5 to 10 pounds a piece. Like 10 to 2 pounds a piece. And so you kind of lift them in and out to get them running. So from here, I'm going to put our indigo on and run the next layer of this.
So we actually have a question from YouTube. Golden Queers asks, do the pages have to dry between prints if you're printing multiple colors on the same page?
I think we should wait to answer that question because I know that viewer lobbed us a softball that we're actually be able to answer with an illustration in just a couple of
Nice.
So Zach put the stack of already printed sheets back in the paper tray. So they're going to go through the machine a second time.
Right now, it's going through an idling process. If you haven't used machines in a few days, it'll do this the first time you fire it up, where it's gonna basically do that flooding of the ink for you. And so it makes a lot of noise before it starts to print.
This is a pretty accurate demo. This is about how long it takes to get printing started.
There's something oddly soothing about that noise.
So that's the first one out. And then I'm just going to run those 15 again like normal. Okay.
You hand me the originals too?
Yeah.
So here's our final print. You can see how the colors overlap to make kind of a nice purple in the middle. And just to show what we worked with originally to get this out of the machine is our scan, the pages we scan in are all grayscale, so black and white. The way that the scanner works is it doesn't pick up color, it just picks up tone. And the machine itself doesn't really care which color ink you have in it because it makes the stencil the same way no matter what. So any part of your paper that is 100% black will be printed out 100% the color of ink in the drum. So if you want, so I think when I made these, this circle is at 75% opacity. And because indigo is a really dark ink, this one is only at 25%. So here's our original scans. And there's our final print. And to answer the question about should you draw your prints between colors, the answer is under normal circumstances, yes. Because the machines weren't originally designed to print multiple colors, when you feed paper with wet ink through the machine a second time, there's rollers and grippers inside the machine that as it handles the paper will pick up a little bit of ink and then transfer that ink onto the next sheet it prints. So not sure if you can see a little bit of orange coming across the page as the paper is being fed through a second time.
Yeah, so as you can see, this feed tire is right in the middle of your page, which is the type of design that would only come into something that was not meant for designers and artists.
Sorry, Zach, I couldn't quite hear that.
The feed tire runs right through the middle of the machine here. So it's always going to run through the middle of your piece of paper through your wet ink. There isn't really a way to dodge it.
Because we're pushing the machines past what they were originally built to do. There are newer machines that can print two colors at the same time. So they're a lot wider, and that's because there's two drums currently sitting in the machine. So as it feeds a single sheet of paper through, it gets printed from both drums. So you're able to avoid a lot of the smudging that you would see using a machine that only has a single drum. But that machine has all sorts of problems. Because it's so much more complicated on the inside, it makes it less reliable. There's just so many different pieces that can break.
More drums, more problems.
Should we show some more examples of Riso printed objects?
That sounds great.
The book that I printed in 2018 is called My First 10 Friends on the Internet. Originally for this project, 10 artists were asked to make a series of books about the number 10. So I went with the internet. What's inside this book is a series of photographs that I took before I ever owned a digital camera. So it's all film photos digitized and juxtaposed with text from my old emails from friends, my old live journal, things like that. So you can kind of see this is printed in black ink and bright red ink. So even just with the single color, you can get a really great range of tone just from one print. Let's see.
Wow.
And so even just bumping yourself up to 2 colors, if you design your image with that in mind, you can get a lot out of just 2 or 3 colors. So here's a print I did in 2017 for a project that Zach organized. It's a photo of my son at about a year old. And this photo was printed with only 2 different colors of ink. So this was printed with fluorescent orange and teal. And it works because the original image was really orange and green heavy. But you can see with just 2 ink colors, you can really make a lot happen on a single page. Wow.
And how do you then, how do you prepare an image like that, a photograph?
So for this one, I use Photoshop, and so Photoshop has different color modes that you can work in. So you would work in RGB mode for images that are going to go online, seen through a screen. And for images that you are going to eventually print, the typical mode that you work in is CMYK, so 4-color process printing. And so when we're designing things for the Riso, we're kind of taking advantage of how Photoshop can separate colors out for different modes of printing. And there are profiles that you can buy in addition to RGB and CMYK that are optimized for the colors of Riso inks. So I had a color profile. I entered in a full color RGB photo, and then I was able to adjust it using the profile. So it separates out everything that's going to be printed in fluorescent orange, and then everything else that's going to be printed in teal, and it spits out 2 grayscale images that you use to scan into the machine. That's it, right? Basically.
So this actually feeds into another question that we got. If someone wants to set up a Risograph Studio, do you recommend having a regular laser or inkjet printer too to create the originals?
Depends on the model that you have. If your machine can be connected directly to a computer, you can send those files digitally. Our 2 older machines do not have an interface between the machine and a computer. I think when they were originally on the market, that cost extra. So a lot of these old machines just don't have them. So in this case, we have a black and white laser printer where we print out all of our original files and then put them on the scanner bed.
Yeah. With part of what I really like about the scanner bed is that I'll do a lot of work that's just collaging, that I'm cutting out scraps of paper, and then you can just put them right onto the scanner bed. And so you can get a little more organic with whatever it is you're making, which is, kind of a fun thing that you can do there. Like with this book, so Amy has much better self-control over figuring out how to do things in 2 colors. I like pushing things to be really dumb. So this was a collaboration with Chute Studio. One of the first things we did as Chute was create this collection of zines that were for their auction last year. But with this, she took plants from her garden and brought them over, and we put them on the scanner bed. And so every page has progressively more color on it from just plants that were on the scanner bed that eventually end in a 11 color centerfold. And then progress back down to what was the original just single color mustard seed. But this, all done on the scanner bed, all with physical plants. But then, this is also another example of me using way too many colors. It's a book with the illustrator Jing Wei that is coming out in the next couple of weeks. This is 5 colors, and it's all done from Illustrator. And so with this, these are all vectored shapes that are within Illustrator, which is how she makes her work. And so with these, you're able to control the color, the opacity level within Illustrator to adjust the certain different tones that are happening. And then lastly, most of my personal work, I actually really nerd out about trying to make Riso do photographic looking work. It's the worst way to use Riso, but the way that I take photos, it works. So that's really what I like doing with my personal work.
Mhm. Yeah, the Riso printing community is large enough now that I feel like there are really strong opinions about certain types of printing, and there'll be like ink color fads that pass through the community. I think Riso, there's like 80 or 90 different color inks that you can print with. Some are more expensive than others. There's a set of standard colors that will run you about $40 to $50 a tube. And then there's some rare colors that are harder to get, but run about $100 a tube. And really it only takes one talented person printing something really cool. And all of a sudden, I know I've seen other people print things. I'm like, oh, I need that color. That color is amazing.
And roughly how many pages of printing do you get out of a tube?
About 2,000, maybe, depending on how heavy the ink coverage is. If you were printing something really ink heavy like photographs, maybe it'd be closer to 1,000 prints. And the other thing that the machine uses up is the stencil material. So that comes in a big roll that you put in the side of the machine. That's actually the most expensive part of Riso printing. And it's the reason why just printing one of something is not really the affordable way to do it. Once you've made the stencil, and each stencil costs about 25, 50 cents, depending on the machine. You can print tens of thousands of prints from a single stencil. So Riso gets really affordable once you're printing over about 50 copies of something. But the first copy is the most expensive. Are there any other questions coming in on the stream?
I don't think so yet, but there may be soon.
We got a couple from Instagram. Is there anything else you want to show, Zach? Just do the parade of prints.
Yeah.
Here's a 3-color print. The background is fluorescent pink. The text is bright red, and the turkey is black.
And I talked at the beginning about how transparent the ink is, but there are quite a few inks that have white in them, and so they actually end up being kind of opaque. And so this is from a project that we did with If You Were Here Now. It's sky blue printed on black, and it's not showing up well in the Zoom, but it actually sits on this paper really, really nicely. And so sometimes printing onto dark is possible. It's just a handful of colors that can do that.
Let's see. The calendar that I printed a few years ago. So these are all one-color prints using Federal blue, which is really close to navy blue. How about your food?
Oh yeah. And so a project that Amy and I are working on right now, we're making a Chute family cookbook that we thought would be a good idea several months ago, and just COVID happened, or COVID continues to happen. But one of the things that happened with it is Rebecca Ackerman is making these tiny sculpted food versions of the food that's in our recipe book. And so these are really tiny clay. And then these are both done through what's sort of a CMYK process type printing of photographs.
Okay, so we've got a couple questions from the internet to read. First question we have is, what's your favorite ink color? Oh, this is a stumper. Oh yeah, so let's grab the...
My personal favorite colors are sunflower. I think it's an essential. And then this color, midnight, which for anyone who has seen Death's poster so far, we use that instead of black because it has a lot of blue within it. So it makes it so that even a black and white image has a little bit more depth to it. So I'm really in love with those colors.
Yeah. This is the equivalent of basic for Riso printers, but my favorite is fluorescent pink, which is why we have a fluorescent pink drum for all 3 of our machines. So it's a useful replacement for magenta for doing full color printing. And also it's the fluorescent colored inks, you get, the appeal is you can print colors that you can't replicate with, say, an inkjet printer. So your inkjet printer is combining 4 different inks to make a full gamut of color, but your inkjet printer can't really print fluorescence in the same way that spot color inks that are like those that are used for Riso can. So
yeah, you were talking about trends. I've definitely seen a lot of in comics that fluorescent pink, usually paired with like a blue or a green.
It's hard to resist.
Pink and blue it's the Riso color. This is a different blue, but the standard fluorescent pink and the standard blue, like they're Riso cliche, but they have continued this long because they are really nice.
Yeah. And a look that you can't really get with other forms of printing. Okay, so our second question of the day is, what is your favorite 2-color combo? You're gonna do a whole project with just 2-color inks.
I wouldn't do one with 2-color ink.
Oh.
You can answer that one.
So my favorite combination is the navy blue with bright red. I don't know. Zach does not like red, which means I just like it even more. So.
I'm the worst Scorpio ever.
That's I've used that pair for a couple projects, but I don't think I have anything else here. Okay, we got. Thank you for participating. Another question we got is how to print from a rip. So we actually don't know how to do that. So
Wait, could you repeat that question?
It's how to print with a rip, which whoever asked that question has some deep Riso inside baseball. It's basically a hard drive that you would connect to your machine that does not have a computer input. We've never bothered to do that, so we don't know the answer to that. Yeah, sorry, whoever asked.
We've been standing on the scanning bed for so long and optimizing that, just because the first 2 machines that we purchased are so old. But if you're printing through a computer, I think the RIP gives you additional options for the output to the machine. So if you are fancy, you might want to see if one is available for your machine. I think for the RIPs that each Riso model number, each Riso model has its own drum, has its own RIP, and they are not necessarily interchangeable between machines. We've been able to move some parts between these particular machines because they're in the same product line, but in general, you don't want to take you can't put a bunch of drums from a GR model machine and put them in an RZ machine. Okay, we have one more question from Instagram. How do you decide the order to lay down colors, especially for photos?
I'm happy to answer that one. So as we mentioned, there's that feed tire that goes right through the middle of your page. Your number one goal in setting up your artwork for Riso is dodge the middle for as long as possible. That's going to give you the cleanest, happiest prints with the least amount of smudging. From there, you actually just treat it really similar to how you would CMYK of, you want to print lightest to darkest. I personally print all of my stuff with blue first, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but that's because our blue has a little bit of white in it. And so that way it's not going to end up overpowering anything else. So I personally always do sky blue, sunflower, sky blue, flow pink, sunflower, midnight, or whatever the versions of yellow and magenta I'm using are. And that gives me the happiest version. Usually, you want to have your darkest key last. So it's actually really similar to however you would think of other process stuff for photographs. When it comes to something like illustration, like if I go back to this like Jingwei book, you know, this, I printed the turquoise last because it was the heaviest coverage, and that's where the tire would go the most. So that's really kind of how you strategize thinking about your prints.
Yeah, the trickiest part of printing in multiple colors is getting everything to line up properly on the final page. So the registration between two colors or more, and it can be a struggle because, again, the machines weren't designed to print in more than one color. So the paper trays, everything on the inside, it'll let your paper wiggle just a little bit. If the machines were designed to print multiple colors, they would probably tighten a fair amount of screws on both ends. So there's some tricks where if I was going to print an illustration with outlines, so outlines and then maybe floods of color inside the shapes, sometimes it helps to print the outlines first. For one reason, it's probably the least amount of ink coverage, and the second is then it's a little bit easier to fit your big spaces of ink up against the line work than vice versa. And
That's the end of our questions.
So I'm really curious, given that, you know, there's such a huge investment in equipment when it comes to Riso printing, what got you both into Riso printing?
So a friend of a friend had been printing comics for a while, so I knew what Riso printing was, and I'd been casually watching Craigslist for a while, and I saw my first machine come up for sale in San Jose. So the school district finished their service contract, and they sold their machine back to the service company, and they refurbished it and they listed it on Craigslist for $250, I think. And I did the math of how much I was spending every year at Kinko's to print my zines. And I figured as long as it worked for a year and a half, it would pay for itself. And then once you start, you get hooked. And then I want more colors. I want to print bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also we both, even though we both only had machines for 4 or 5 years, something really changed in the Riso market in the last 2 years that has made it exponentially more expensive. Like this machine, I got this machine in 4 drums for $400, which is absolutely insane. So really, Riso is kind of going through a very similar thing that letterpress did 10 years ago. Where people were spending thousands of dollars for rusty Vandercooks. And so I think we both got lucky that we kind of got in right before it got a little crazy. But as for like philosophically and aesthetically, why I was drawn to it, the super low cost of copies was really exciting. And I'm one of those artists that like is kind of a designer and kind of an artist, and I'm a very bad printmaker. I take bad photos, and all those things together really work really nicely with Riso. They give me what I really want from my personal images. And it also gives me a way to always be collaborating with other artists, always be putting work out with other artists. Most of what I put out is with people who are not printmakers or book artists. So it's a way for me to bring along painters and sculptors to come into this, zine and book world. And so that's really kind of the community aspect of it is a really big part of it for me.
Yeah, the way that the Risos print is maybe not very intuitive, especially if you're familiar with desktop printers or Xerox machines. But I feel like compared to other fine art printmaking methods, the barrier to entry for Riso is really low compared to learning how to operate a letterpress or do hand-pulled silkscreen prints. This is it's not very messy.
Yeah, it's a machine you put in your room. You don't need water. You don't need that much electricity. You don't have any sort of a toxic cleanup stuff.
Yeah, no hazardous materials.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Is there a lot of instruction that you have to do with other artists when you're working with other artists to print their work?
The hardest part is designing and optimizing your files for Riso printing, because it is so much different than a desktop printer or a photocopier or even a lot of other printmaking methods. So it's really all the work is done before you step up to the machine to make your print.
Yeah, it translates best to screen printing. So if people understand how to do screen printing, that's probably the easiest folks to work with. But yeah, there are, but even with screen printing, the fact that we're not just doing flat colors is always a little bit of a barrier. For me, a lot of, to go back to why I like Riso, I wish I had one of those projects that was here. I really like that, there's a project I did with a friend who's a painter that she made all these paintings, that then she sent me the images and I had to translate them into Riso. And so it's not like I'm just printing her work. There's a lot of work that has to go on my end to clean things up. So it really does make it a collaboration, even if the book is in theory just a book full of her paintings.
Yeah, it sounds like you'd have to do a lot of interpretation.
Yeah.
So it's when COVID is finally over and we can do in-person workshops, I've been doing workshops for 2 years over at the Compound Gallery. Mary Bryn teaches workshops at the San Francisco Center for the Book for Riso. Max Stadnick at Tiny Splendor, also in Berkeley, they have workshops. And I think it really helps to stand next to a machine, watch the prints come out, see how your original translates onto the page, and then starting your next project after that, you can be very successful. So even just getting a little bit of experience on what the ink looks like on the page, that kind of stuff helps a lot.
So we have a question here. How much does it cost for an artist to print a run of zines with Chute Studio? You said that at about 50, it becomes more cost efficient. So what would a 50 to 100 run cost?
So that, so every project is totally different, unfortunately. We have a very base cost of $25 per color setup, and then 25 cents per print. And so, if you did a 4-color print, that's $1 per print, and then $100 setup. And so that's why if you only made one print, you spent $101. But if you made 100 prints, you spent $200. So but even then, that's all kind of based on how many you want of something, how many colors you want of something. If we're going to chop it down,
The size of the paper, with the particular colors of ink that you want to use, because different inks cost different amounts, and then how much work on the other end to bind and collate and trim. But if you were looking to print 50 to 100 books, we can probably find a way to do that for $3 to $5 a book in the end. So the more you want, the happier we are to help, and the less it'll cost per book.
Nice. That
that's
sounds
a really unsatisfying answer.
Well, I think it's helpful in giving people sort of a baseline of what they could expect.
Yeah, because a lot of it is the labor. Like, books are just really labor intensive to put together.
Yeah, there's also there's a lot of waste to get things up and running, and so that's why one print also is more expensive, because I actually made 20 prints to get you that one print that looks good. But if you're making 100 prints, that all kind of falls into the wash.
And different machines use different materials. So a master on one of these smaller machines is like 2/3 the price of a master on the large machine. So that's a factor too. So depends on what machine we're going to print it on. And if we can't help you with your project, we can probably direct you to somebody who can. I think the Riso community is pretty well connected, and we're happy to put you in touch with someone who can help you if we're not the right spot to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of intentionally pick colors that that other shops don't have, so that, you know, we don't have the same colors as floss on purpose, so that if you really wanted something that used, you know, aqua and black, we could send you to them. Yeah, so that way we kind of have everybody in the area has everything they need.
And the best part about Riso is everybody involved is really nice. It just seems to attract really nice people. So feel free to send us a message if you ever have any questions.
Nice. Any final thoughts, plugs you want to do?
If you go to our website, that will have, I always have to remember, chutestudio.com. That has this full color chart. It also, you can't really see it on here, but it's got like color approximations for everything to help you design things and think through what you might want to work with.
Yeah, so here's us on Instagram. There we go. Let's see. If you're interested in seeing what we do for our personal art practice, this is.
I'm Zach Clark is.
This one is mine.
Amy's at Awkward Ladies Club.
Make sure that's enough time to. Okay.
We'll also have all the links in the video description.
Awesome, fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be respectful of everyone's time. So thanks for sitting with us for as long as you did.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys going into the studio and masking up and bearing with us on the audio and all of those things and just showing us what you guys do. It's really beautiful work.
Thank you. We're both smiling under our masks. You can't tell, but we are.
Well, great. Fantastic. All right. I am going to wrap up just a moment. Okay. So once again, thank you to Chute Studio. And you can check them out at chutestudio.com and at Instagram at ochute, that's OHCHUTE. Just going to let you know what is up next. So in just a few minutes, we're going to be starting family-friendly drawing games. I am going to be hosting that from 2 to 3 p.m. Tomorrow, we've got lots of stuff going on. From 2 to 3, we have one of our exhibitor show and tells. They have all been amazing and fun, and I totally recommend checking them out. We also are going to have a panel with artist parents talking about what it's like to create as a parent at this moment in time. That's going to be from 3 to 4 p.m. We're going to also have our Q&A with our third guest of honor, Tana Tucker, tomorrow from 4 to 5 p.m. You can check all this stuff out on YouTube and Facebook. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 6 to 7, we will have exhibitor show and tells. And on Thursday from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., we are going to have our Thinking Captions, which is curated by Tana Tucker, and that's going to be with Minnie Fan, Richie Pope, and Soleil Summer. And thank you so much to ProBonoASL for doing ASL interpretation for this event. We greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate you being here. And of course, SF Zine Fest is a member of Intersection for the Arts. Intersection for the Arts is a Bedrock Bay Area arts nonprofit that provides people working in arts and culture with fiscal sponsorship and resources to grow. Thank you, as always, to them. And thank you again for tuning in for another Cyberfest event. You can always check out what's going on at sfzinefest.org. Be sure to check out our store there for the Death Peace Sun poster that is printed by Chute Studio. And thank you again to them for that. And